Hello, this is Jimmy. You're reading with Jimmy, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and we're analyzing Chapter 5, Advice from a Caterpillar. Pardon me. And we left off last time with Alice's recital of "You Are Old Father William," and we found out that it's when she recited the poem, it was very different from the original. They called it a parody. You can look up what parody is. In any case, the next 2 pages, the caterpillar says after Alice is finishing reciting, that is not said right. Alice replies, "Not quite right, I'm afraid." She said timidly. Remember those words I told you, those ly words? That's the third person narrator telling us the tone of what Alice is saying. And when the caterpillar says it's not said right, you didn't say that right, she says, "It's not quite right, I'm afraid." She realizes that timidly. Some of the words have got altered. Some of the words. I showed you the original poem after reading Alice's version of that poem, and it's not some of the words, it's a lot of the words. In any case, "It is wrong from beginning to end," said the caterpillar decidedly. And yes, we can agree with the caterpillar. And then there was silence for some minutes. You see this here? Remember, silence is very important. There was no talking for some minutes. What does that mean? Well, some is not 1. It's not 2. Could be 3 or more, right? Some minutes. Could be 5. If I stop talking now and start and let 5 minutes or 2 minutes or even 1 minute or 30 seconds go, you'd see how long the silence can be. That was just 5 seconds. So imagine being silent for a minute. The caterpillar breaks that silence and says, "What size do you want to be?" Remember, I told you earlier, size is a very important concept in this because Alice keeps shrinking and growing and shrinking and growing. And she answers the caterpillar by saying, "I'm not particular as to size." Well, she hastily replied. I forgot, I better put that word, hastily. She was hasty. She hastily replied. What is that? She hurried the answer. Only one doesn't like change so often, you know. One doesn't like changing so often. I want to call your attention to the word one, O-N-E here. Why does she use the word one? Let's look at that. What does she mean by one? I'm not particular as to size, only it doesn't, I don't like changing so often. That's what she's really saying, but she uses the word one. Why does she use the word one? One doesn't like changing. That's a formal way of speaking. When you don't want to use your first person, the I don't like changing. You use the third person, one. One doesn't like changing. You see? One doesn't like to run. One doesn't like to sleep. I don't like to sleep. So the next time you want to do, somebody's telling you to do something that you don't want to do, don't use I, use one. One doesn't like going to the store. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. And she says, "You know." "I don't know," said the caterpillar. How many times have you been talking to people and they use "you know"? You know? You know? Sometimes if you listen when people are talking and you see them use the word "you know" in the conversation, this word right here, that's a filler. They call that a filler when you're having a conversation. You know? Sometimes you could use it to effect, but some people use it to their detriment. You can look that word up. It's really bad because then once you start hearing it over and over and over again, you start concentrating on you know, instead of listening to the conversation. So avoid it. Be like "I don't know," said the caterpillar. Alice said nothing. She had never been so much corrected in all her life before. So that's an interesting comment from the third person narrator. She was never corrected so much before, contradicted rather. and she felt that she was losing her temper. There's the temper again, and don't forget the caterpillar's advice, don't lose your temper. Are you content now? Said the caterpillar. What's he asking? Are you content in your size now? And she says, well, I should like to be a little larger, sir. She's saying with respect. Remember, she's treating him with respect, even though they're arguing and blah, blah, blah. If you wouldn't mind, 3 inches is such a wretched height to be. So now we know she's 3 inches tall. And we knew that before because of swimming in the pool of tears. Pool of tears was 4 inches, if you remember. So she's 3 inches tall. She's a little thing. It's such a wretched height, she says. Wretched. Ugh. But what does the caterpillar say? It's a very good height. And why does he say that? Well, because he's probably 3 inches, right? And in fact, if you go to the next page, he says angrily, rearing itself upright, and it was exactly 3 inches high. That's the caterpillar's height. Remember, knowledge is comparison. Let me write that down. Again, I've written this down before for you. Knowledge is, did I spell that out right? Hold on. Knowledge is comparison. 3 inches is it could be wretched, but in the case of a caterpillar, it's perfect. It's exactly how tall he is. So remember that when you're thinking about size or anything, knowledge is comparison. Who's saying it? What do they mean by it? And they may, you may not have to agree with it. It may not be wretched if you're a caterpillar. But I'm not used to it, she says. She pleaded in a piteous tone. Piteous. She thought to herself, I wish the creatures wouldn't be so easily offended. Ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the most important concepts that you can think about. Because Alice wishes that the creatures wouldn't be so easily offended. But who's really easily offended? Is it the creatures or is it Alice being easily offended? One of the truths of life is that we often project into others what we ourselves are guilty of. You see? So I'm not going to tell you which way is right. I'm not going to tell you, is the caterpillar easily offended or is Alice easily offended? You figure it out. But I'm going to tell you right now, she's wishing these creatures were not so easily offended, but sometimes I think she's offended. Don't forget, she was going to leave. She lost her temper. She was tired of talking to this caterpillar. You'll get used to it in time, said the caterpillar. And he put the hookah into its mouth and began smoking again. Get used to what? It. What is it? Being easily offended. Now, here's an important point. All right. Alice thought she thought this to herself. Let me get rid of this. Hold on. She thought to herself. She thought to herself. If she thought to herself, I wish these creatures weren't so easily offended, and the caterpillar says, you'll get used to it in time, does that mean he can read her mind? Can the caterpillar read her mind? See what I wrote here? Huh. I never thought of that. What do you think? This time Alice waited patiently until it chose to speak again. In a minute or two, the caterpillar took the hookah out of its mouth, yawned, shook itself, got down from the mushroom, and crawled away. One side will make you grow taller, and the other side will make you grow shorter, he says. The caterpillar said. One side of what? The other side of what? Thought Alice to herself. Of the mushroom, said the caterpillar, just as if she had asked it out loud. And in another moment, it was out of sight. So here we find the mysterious caterpillar now can read Alice's thoughts, which means he was probably reading her thoughts all along. So I would invite you to go back and reread this chapter and see how many times Alice is thinking to herself that the caterpillar can read her mind. Remember, this is Wonderland. Things like this happen. And he's basically telling her one side of the mushroom will make her smaller and one will make her larger. She's about to gain control of her size. So she remembered looking thoughtfully at the mushroom for a minute, trying to make out which were the two sides. And it was perfectly round, and she found this a very difficult question. Isn't that the truth? If you saw a circle, which side is which side? Which side is the right side? Which side is the left side? Which side is the top? Which side is the bottom? It's impossible. Would you agree with that? But at last she stretched her arms around it and broke off a bit on each side. Let's hope she's enough to have the difference between the right and the left, but she doesn't know. She's just grabbing the mushroom. But now she has to make a decision. Which is which? So she nibbles. See the word nibble? A little of the right hand, and the next moment she felt a violent blow underneath her chin. It had struck her foot. She nibbles a little on the right hand, and boom, her chin hits her foot. What does that mean? She's shrinking. She was a good deal frightened by this sudden change, and she felt that there was no time to be lost. She was shrinking rapidly, so she worked at once to eat the other bit, and her chin was pressed so closely against her foot. She takes a bite that it was hardly room to open her mouth, but she did it, and at last she managed to swallow a morsel of the left hand. The right hand shrinks, the left hand grows. I put those words in there from the next page so you're not worried about what's going to go on and she's going to shrink to oblivion. Anyway, she's got two pieces of the mushroom now. One lets her grow, and she can control her size. For the first time since she shrunk, right? Since she went down that rabbit hole and started drinking and eating things around her that said, eat me, the caterpillar gives her the secret for growing or shrinking. Very important. This is Jimmy. We're analyzing Chapter 5, Advice from a Caterpillar, which, by the way, this is pretty good advice now, isn't it? Except she got really lucky with that mushroom. Because if you stretch around the mushroom, you could take two sides of the same thing, I would suspect. I'm going to guess. Reading with Jimmy. My name is Jimmy. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com is my email. Please email me. Thanks for listening and have a great day. We'll see you at the next analysis of Chapter 5.